Hey everyone, this video will be the first video in a new series going over React. In this first video, we'll introduce React and some basic concepts. So right here, I'm at reactjs.org. Let's go ahead and click the Get Started button to jump into the documentation and get started. So now that we're in here at the Getting Started guide, you'll see over here they have all sorts of different stuff. They have the installation, main concepts, advanced concepts, and some other stuff down here. And we're going to take a video and go through each of these different concepts and just kind of go over how to the general ideas that they kind of talk about in this documentation. So this will be a very useful resource if you get stuck or need some extra information. So I'll keep the links to all these in the description as we go through them. Let's go ahead and get started with our first basic React project. So there's a lot of different ways we could install and kind of get React started. I'm going to use what we call is create a new React app with create React app, which is this command right here. So I already have everything on my computer installed, ready to go, but you'll need to have node, and it has to be greater than or equal to 14, and npm greater than or equal to 5.6. So go ahead and make sure you have those installed. I mean, you can just Google, node install. And it'll give you a download to Node.js. Make sure you install Node.js, and then you can just do install npm, and then you can get documentation here about how to install and get Node.pm installed on your machine. And make sure you have the newest version, or at least a new enough version for the Create React app. Once you have those installed, we can go ahead and run this command here, npx create react app, and then give our app a name. So I already have a project open. So I have this folder here open, and I have the terminal open to this folder. So I'm already kind of set up, ready to go. Go ahead and get something set up for yourself. And then we can go ahead and type npx create react app. And I'll call this one just tutorial. And also to note here, it's npx, not npm. If you're familiar with npm, you may use the npm command before. But in this case, we're using npx. This will take a second to go ahead and install and create a project for us. Okay, and now it's done, and you'll go ahead and you'll see some instructions here how we can get this project running. So let's go ahead and do this right now. So we'll cd into tutorial, and then we'll run npm start. And this will start up our React application. It'll open up a window here, and it should load the basic starter code. There we go. Okay, so the basic code here is just a spinning React logo with some text down here and a link to the documentation. Let's go ahead and jump into the code and see what it created for us. So we have our node modules. We're going to go ahead and skip that. This is has a bunch of stuff in it, but we're not really going to get into that. So we'll skip our node modules. Inside the public folder, you'll see some things here. And once again, we're going to skip most of this for now. We'll get into some of these other things later. Our main focus, what we want to focus on here, is the Src directory. This holds all of our JavaScript code for this application. So if we go through these files, we have a CSS file, we have an app.js, a test.js, CSS, an index.js, and this logo here. So let's go ahead and start here at our index.js. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what all this is doing, but in this file here, what we have is we have our root, and we're rendering that to the DOM. So this is kind of the entry point of our application. Everything kind of starts here. And what we're doing here is we're loading in this app component. We'll get more into components here in a little bit, but all you need to know is that what this is loading in is coming from this import statement right here. So it's importing app from /app.js. It just doesn't have the JS appended on here. So we can find that file in here, app.js. And this is a JavaScript component here, and you can see this is all the code for what this page is showing. This logo here is loaded in right here on this image tag. We have this text here, and we also have, we have the text here, and we have this link right here for Learn React, which you can all see on this page right here. I'm going to go ahead and put this into my other window just to make it a little easier. So I can't. We'll go ahead and just close this one out. I'm going to open it up over here just to make things a little bit easier to keep everything in the same place. But yeah, so that's what we're doing here is this index.js is the entry point, and then this app.js here is the kind of our root, or not a root, but our main component. And so we're going to work primarily just in this app component, and we'll add other components inside of this app component. So everything else we're not going to worry about too much. The CSS obviously is applying styles, and we have our logo here and some web vitals, some other things here, but that's not really important. I kind of just want to go over what these files were, just so you kind of understood what was happening. That this is kind of the root, and this app.js is where we will do most of our work in. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First, let's just go ahead and just delete everything inside this div. I'm going to delete all of this, and then I can go ahead and clean up the imports here. We don't need the app CSS or the logo, so I'll delete all of that. I'll go ahead also just delete all the CSS out of these files, just to get rid of all of these styles we don't really need or want right now. So we'll get rid of all that. And now we come back here, we just have a blank page. So this gets us into our next concept of React. We have our JavaScript, but you'll notice inside of our JavaScript, we have some HTML. And this is what you'll hear is called JSX. We go in the documentation here, they'll have a section on JSX right down here. And really, it's just HTML that's put inside of the JavaScript. Now, it will look a little different for some things. If you look at the example code, you'll notice that it said class name equals instead of class. And so there are some differences that you'll have to get used to. But this really works pretty much the same way as normal HTML does. And so inside of here, we can go ahead and put any HTML you want. So I can go ahead and put an h1 tag and just put hello world. And I can go ahead and put a p tag here and just do, I don't know, paragraph text. And then if we go ahead and look in our application, we save that, it will auto reload for us. We go to our application, you'll see it says hello world and h1 tag, and then paragraph text and this paragraph tag. And so we can build out a normal application just like that. But if you look inside of like our index.js, you'll notice we have this app and then a slash, like a closing tag. And so it's just like an HTML tag, but with this app in here, which we're importing from this file right here. And so what we're doing here is we're bringing in components, and we can build different components and then load them into our main app file here to render them on the page. So let's go ahead and try an example out in case that doesn't make sense. So inside my source folder here, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder, and I'm going to call it components. Inside of our components file here, I'm going to go ahead and just create a file here, save it as just example with a capital E. React components typically start with a capital letter, so we'll do capital E example.js, and this will create a React component. And we can go ahead and create it the same way we created this. We create a function and return something, and then we can export default app at the bottom, or export default at the bottom. So if we go inside here, we can do function app, and then we can go ahead and just return whatever. And down here, we'll do export default. Sorry, not app. This will be called example. We'll make sure this matches what we called our file. So example here, this will be example right there as well. The export default example. Now inside of here, I'll go ahead and just render something out. So I'll do like an h1. Now let's do example component. We're going to close off the h1 tag, and then I'll do a paragraph tag. And actually, let's go ahead and wrap this whole thing in a div. It's not going to like it otherwise. So we'll wrap everything in a div. Just like that. And we'll go ahead and just indent that all in. Another thing to mention here is that React components require one parent element. So we can't have just these out here. And if we try putting another div outside of here, it's going to get all weird and throws the colors off because it doesn't like having multiple parent elements. So make sure you have one parent element. And so in this case, I can wrap everything in a div. Also, if we wanted to, we can wrap everything in what's called a React fragment, which is just an empty tag. Both of those are valid, and we go to either one to give us one parent. Anyway, back to our component here. I'll go and add some text in here. I'll just do example component paragraph text, and we'll save that. Now we can go ahead and use this component inside of our app.js. So I'll go ahead down here, and below the paragraph tag here, I'll go ahead and put in /example and close it off like an HTML tag. I can go ahead and import at the top here. So I'll do an import example from /components/example. and we'll save that. We come back to our application here, and you'll see now it put example component and then the example component paragraph text. So what it's doing here is it's taking this example tag here, replacing it with everything inside this return statement. And the nice thing about React components is we can reuse them over and over again. So I can go back to my app.js here. I can copy this down a couple times, save it, and now we go back to the browser here. It now has it 3 times, and so I can put the logic all in one place and then render it multiple times elsewhere, which is super handy and very nice to use. But that is really all we're going to do to get this project started. I just want to get a project created and go over the basic components of JSX and components and how this all works together. In the next few videos, we'll go ahead and build out an actual application with React, just kind of building off of what we learned in this first video. So real quick, a quick recap of what we did. We created an application with React in the terminal with create React app. We ran it with npm start, and that ran it at localhost 3000, which you can see right here, localhost 3000. The index.js is the entry point. It's loading in this app.js file, or this app.js component. And then inside of every component, we have a return statement, and that's going to return some sort of HTML, but technically it's called JSX because it has some differences, like right here, class name instead of class. So in typical HTML or CSS, to put a CSS class on an HTML element, you put class equals something. In this case, it has to be class name because class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So it got changed to class name. But other than that, though, pretty much all the other HTML tags work the same. We also have access to custom tags, being these components. We can create components. Typically, you put them in a components folder like this. But we can create a component, which is just another React function or class or whatever. And it has once again has a return statement, and then it renders some sort of JSX, and then it will replace this tag with this JSX in the return statement. So in this case, we are rendering an H1 and a P tag for every example tag we have in here, which gives us the ability to create reusable code very easily that way. So that's really it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you got something out of it. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.